There's a secret world hidden in plain sight, one that only the wealthiest 0.001% of humanity ever see. A world where money isn't just power, it's control. A world where rules don't apply, where entire economies are rigged, and where those who know too much simply disappear. But what if I told you that one billionaire, one of the most powerful men alive, walked away from everything? His empire, his fortune, his influence, all gone overnight. Why? Because of one woman. A woman who changed everything, and then, just as suddenly, vanished without a trace. And here's the twist that will break your mind. She never existed. Yes, you heard that right. This billionaire fell in love, gave up everything, for a ghost. A shadow. A perfectly crafted illusion designed to destroy him. But who created her? And why did they want him ruined? This is the story the elite don't want you to hear. A story so shocking, so unbelievable, that by the time you reach the end, you'll question everything you thought you knew about love, power, and the terrifying price of trusting the wrong person. Asterisk. At first glance, Alexander Drake had it all. A self-made billionaire, a tech mogul, and a man whose name alone could shake financial markets. His empire stretched across industries, cybersecurity, and even secret government contracts. He wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. The kind of man who never heard the word no. To the public, he was a visionary. The media painted him as a genius who redefined the future. Every headline worshipped him, the man who built an empire from nothing. He graced the covers of Forbes, Time, and Fortune. His lavish lifestyle was a fantasy for millions. Mansions in Monaco, private islands in the Pacific, a garage filled with hypercars that never touched pavement. He had the power to buy nations, and yet, he never seemed satisfied. Those who knew him personally whispered a different story. Behind closed doors, Alexander was restless. Paranoid. Trapped in a world he no longer controlled. Money had become meaningless. His success was built on ruthless decisions, broken partnerships, and enemies that never forgave. Then came her. A woman unlike any he had ever met. Someone who saw beyond his wealth, his power, someone who made him feel human again. And that was his greatest mistake. Alexander Drake didn't just make money, he created it. Not in the literal sense, but in ways the average person couldn't even comprehend. His billion-dollar empire wasn't built on luck, innovation, or even intelligence alone. It was built on secrets. Deals made in the shadows. Laws bent until they snapped. At the surface, his companies looked legitimate: tech firms, security contracts, cutting-edge AI research. But the real wealth? It came from what people never saw. Insider deals that made stock prices jump overnight. Algorithms that predicted financial crashes before they happened. Data leaks that destroyed competitors at the perfect moment. And yet, none of that shook him. He had been playing this game for decades. Until she came along. Her name was Lilith Monroe. Mysterious. Intelligent. Unlike any woman he had ever met. She wasn't dazzled by his money, wasn't intimidated by his power. That alone was a red flag. Women always wanted something: status, influence, or a ticket into his world. But Lilith? She acted like she had more than him. Like she knew something he didn't. At first, he found it refreshing. Then, things started changing. She asked questions no one ever dared to ask. She knew things about his empire that only his closest circle did. She challenged him, made him rethink the game he had mastered. For the first time in his life, Alexander felt vulnerable. And that's when it happened, his first major loss. A business deal so secure, so carefully orchestrated, that it should have been impossible to fail. And yet, within 48 hours, it crumbled. Billions wiped from his fortune. Coincidence? Or was it her? Alexander Drake had always known the world played by two sets of rules, one for the masses, and one for the ultra-elite. But what most people didn't realize was that there was an even deeper layer beneath that. A hidden network of untouchable power players, not just billionaires, but the ones who controlled them. The real architects of wealth and influence. Drake had spent decades at the top, but he had never truly questioned how deep the game went. Until Lilith arrived. Until his world began to unravel. It started with whispers, subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in his world. Longtime allies refused to take his calls. His private jet was denied clearance at an airstrip he practically owned. Then, his encrypted servers, impenetrable for years, were breached. Someone, somewhere, was sending a message, "You're no longer untouchable." He ran names through his private network, looking for answers. That's when he found something that made his blood run cold. Lilith Monroe did not exist. No birth records. No digital footprint. Not a single trace of her past. It was impossible. Every person on the planet left some kind of mark, bank transactions, social media remnants, passport entries. But Lilith? Nothing. The deeper he dug, the darker things became. He uncovered rumors of an elite faction, not the familiar billionaires seen at world summits or tech conferences, but those above them. These weren't just corporate tycoons. These were the orchestrators of wars. The manipulators of recessions. The silent hands behind political revolutions. And according to everything he found, Lilith was one of them. She hadn't entered his life by accident. She had been placed there. But why? And who had sent her? By the time he realized the truth, it was too late. Alexander Drake thought he had seen it all. He believed he understood the game, the power plays, the hidden deals, the invisible wars fought in boardrooms instead of battlefields. But nothing had prepared him for this. Lilith Monroe wasn't just an anomaly. She was a ghost, a phantom that was never meant to be found. And yet, she had slipped into his life like a perfectly executed algorithm, one designed for a single purpose, to destroy him. But why? He had billions, influence, control over industries that shaped nations. But what he discovered next made money look like a child's game. He was never truly in control. For years, he had thought billionaires were at the top of the pyramid. But the deeper he looked, the more disturbing the truth became. The world's wealthiest men and women? They were just pieces on a much larger board. Their money wasn't power, it was a leash. The real power belonged to those who didn't need their names on Forbes. Alexander had assumed his wealth shielded him from the unseen forces that shaped the world. But Lilith had proven otherwise. His empire had been allowed to exist. And now, someone had decided he was no longer useful. But he still had one question. Who was Lilith working for? Then, one night, his encrypted laptop displayed a single line of text. "You were never meant to know." And just like that, every bank account he owned was frozen. His security clearances? Revoked. His name? Blacklisted from every system he had built. In less than 24 hours, Alexander Drake had been erased. There was one last person he could call, the only friend he had left. Someone he had trusted for years. But when the call connected, he didn't hear a familiar voice. He heard Lilith. "Did you really think you were ever in control?" she whispered. Then the line went dead. Alexander Drake was erased. Not killed. Not imprisoned. But something far worse, wiped from existence. His empire, built over decades, now belonged to someone else. His name was a ghost in the financial system. His contacts, his assets, his power, gone. And yet, the world carried on as if he had never existed. But why should this matter to you? Because Alexander's story isn't just about a billionaire's downfall. It's about the system that controls us all. We like to believe that billionaires call the shots, that money equals power. But the truth? Billionaires are just employees of a much deeper system. Have you ever wondered why certain people rise while others disappear? Why some scandals make headlines while others are buried overnight? Why politicians, CEOs, and world leaders all seem to serve the same invisible agenda? Alexander thought he had the answers, until he realized he was just a pawn. And if someone with his wealth and influence could be erased, what does that mean for the rest of us? The system that took him down isn't just watching the ultra-rich. It watches everyone. Every move you make. Every dollar you spend. Every thought you post online. It's all fed into an algorithm, a network of power so vast, so deeply embedded in our lives, that we don't even recognize it. And when someone becomes too powerful, too unpredictable, or too dangerous to the machine, they disappear. Just like Alexander. Just like countless others you never heard about. You might think you're safe because you're not a billionaire. But that's exactly the illusion they want you to believe. Question everything. The world isn't what it seems. Control your data. What you share online is being used to shape your future. Follow the money. If you want to see who's really in charge, look at who can't be touched. And most importantly, never believe you're too small to matter. Because the moment you do, you've already lost. Alexander Drake thought he had power. He thought his billions shielded him from the game. But in the end, he was just another piece on the board. And the moment he became a threat to those truly in control, they didn't fight him. They didn't imprison him. They erased him. No headlines. No scandals. No trace that he ever existed. And that's the terrifying part. Because if a man with limitless resources, private security, and government connections could be erased overnight, what does that mean for you? You think you have control over your life? Think again. Your job, your money, your future, it's all dictated by forces you will never see. A hidden network of power that decides who wins, who loses, and who disappears. You were never meant to question it. You were never meant to see it. And if you try, you will be silenced. But now you know the truth. And once you see the strings, you can never unsee them. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you ignore it and pretend nothing's wrong? Or will you start looking deeper, questioning everything? Because the real game isn't about money. It's about who gets to stay in the game at all. And the question is: are you next? Police car light before this video disappears, share it. Let people know. Because the moment they stop us from talking about it, that's when you'll know it's real. Police car light.